Good morning. It is 8:38. It's time for your Revelstoke Mayor Report with Mayor Gary Sauls. Good morning, Gary.
Good morning, Sean. How are you?
I'm doing excellent, Gary.
Good.
It's nice to see. Oh, you got a goatee today. Sometimes it's a beard, sometimes it's a goatee. You never know. You're like us young kids. We can't commit to a facial hairstyle.
There we go.
So, Gary, it's been a light week. I think it's summertime now, and this happened previously with Mark. It happened previously with Dave, where I find July and August, there's a little light. It's a little lighter at times with questions and stuff. I feel like we get very angry at each other in the thicket in the fall, in the winter, and early spring, and then it kind of lightens up. So,
yeah, it's a little lighter. There's still all kinds of projects going on in City Hall with planning and whatnot, and we've just finished a big run on collecting taxes. So the girls are busy in the vault counting the dollar bills.
yeah, I'm sure it's a lot of fun. I know people absolutely love just coughing up money.
Of course.
You too.
You and me as well.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's a big deal. So we've got a few things that have come up from the government that I thought we would chat about.
Sure.
You want to dive into it? You know what I'm going to ask you about?
Well, you go ahead.
Okay.
You ask questions and we'll field them.
Okay, so we were always talking about Three Valley Gap. We're talking about trucking along our highways and just some of the issues and concerns that people here and, of course, throughout BC have. So they just recently implemented a new rule. So I thought I'd ask you about that and what your thoughts are. And finally, it's kind of here.
Well, we're talking about the training for truck drivers.
Yeah.
And it's something that I've been advocating through my business for a long time, seeing a necessity for that training.
Through the funeral home.
Yep,
Yeah.
exactly. So as we move forward, I'm excited to see that. I'm hoping that will come to fruition across the country, and I understand that the minister is working on that as well federally. So hopefully Minister Garneau will get that together, and everyone will be seeing some training. So that's a bonus going forward. I'm not sure.
It does
how
make
soon.
sense if you do stuff you are trained ahead of time.
Yeah,
It's
but
pretty logical.
Training for driving in Alberta is a lot different than training for driving here through our mountain roads.
My dad worked for early distributors.
Yep.
And they used to, so all the smaller warehouses. So I think like where Bobby's dad, it was once an early back in the day. So dad would ship here and to Serrano, Sycamore, all the small ones all the way up north. And he said that was always one of the bigger issues that they noticed in the Lower Mainland when they were shipping across, which was the drivers were not always aware of the mountain terrain compared to the flatlands, and it is wickedly different. Different.
Yeah.
Now, there are definitely some skilled drivers out there that might even be able to do it backwards, but that's few and far between. So this is probably for the betterment of everybody and the safety on the road.
I believe so. So that's one step forward. Federal government has announced some funding for our highways as well. Got an email from our local ministry basically saying this is a big picture, but
By the snow shed, right?
yeah.
Was this not in the works for a while, or?
There's been all kinds of things in the works over the years, and it's just trying to find funding and picking spots that they can actually get some work done where it's relatively, and I'm going to say the word easy because some of the harder stuff costs billions of dollars to get done.
Well, yeah, I mean, realistically, if Three Valley Gap were to be 4-lane, you're talking about rock blasting on a grand scale.
Yeah.
We'd be flooding that lake.
Yeah,
Most
probably
likely with all the
filling it
stones.
in.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So that's a positive, but it still has to go through the provincial government as well and come up with a plan and how this is going to be done. So that's a little off in the distance. But they are talking about things that I've been really a proponent on, and that is lane separation. So I had a meeting a couple months ago with a lot of the local police, the coroners, and the Ministry of Highways staff, talking about how we accomplish some safety in some of these corridors that I'm getting called to with my business. And so we look at that and say lane separation is important. So whether it's a no post down the center line or the little porcupine poles that you see kind of over by Tim Hortons, that sort of thing, that just creates an image of separation. It's not going to physically do something, but sometimes the roads are not wide enough to do anything more than that. So we're going to see how that pans out as we move into the future.
So in your experience, have you noticed, or can you kind of gauge that those meridians in the middle actually do work in some way, or is it a brain mental trick that we just sort of veer a little more on the other side? Or What do you think it is?
Well, it's both. So definitely they work those things, those grooves that are cut in the highway that work to keep people awake. I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure it does anything more. If I have my wife and she's napping, and as we're driving down the road, it wakes her up. But whether it keeps anyone else awake, I don't know. But there's definitely anything that they do is going to be a bonus going forward.
Okay, well, that's good news. Bit by bit, right? Maybe when I'm 90, we'll see some wicked changes.
Absolutely.
So we've had lots of discussion over the last year about culture at City Hall, and things always got to go through growing pains, right? Things you guys have been working on it, trying to get things better, and you can't expect drastic and perfect change overnight. There's going to be some growing pains incoming bit by bit.
It's coming, yep.
Have you found that we'll go with development services, that's just been the hot topic for the year, that things are starting to get unsludged a little, that there's still due process, but it's getting better? I know we don't have staff, or we're still low on staff. But
we're still low on staff, but we've got more contractors coming in now, and so we're starting to see things move along fairly quickly. Communication with the public is definitely at one of its highest levels. So I think that's a bonus moving forward. I'm seeing lots of meetings with the developers as they get their permits. I'm not getting as many emails as I used to regarding that.
Well, that's good. I have seen some posts and stuff like that, but it's also up to us to lean in and read what's going on as well. You know, if you're leaning in for a kiss, you got to get the other kiss from the other side. You know, you got to kiss back, right? So
okay,
there's your example here. Is there anything coming up in the next while that you think is going to be important for the community to know on a fairly medium to big scale?
Well, I think we're still waiting to hear from the provincial government dealing with the caribou.
Yep.
So we're looking at that. Talked to Minister of or the Leader of the Opposition last week. We talked about those things. We talked about housing and some of the issues, highway as well, in our area. So we're hoping that as we move forward, the federal election's coming, that maybe there'll be some changes on the horizon that'll be positive for this community.
You guys were working on the OCP, right?
Yep.
Which kind of sounds like a rap song from the 90s. But so when you're dealing with the OCP, and I'm still learning about that myself and what the process is. So is this sort of, and pardon me for asking maybe a dumb question, but you're looking at it objectively as what the what the community was, what it is, and what you want it to look like, correct?
Yeah.
And does that mean everything from the styling of homes that you want, the concepting of homes, i.e. townhomes, etc., and then you kind of go, okay, we know we need this, so that is open for discussion for a contractor to build this because we want it or need it.
Well, that's part of it. So OCP means official community plan. So when we talk about doing that, we talk about neighborhoods. And when we're talking about planning neighborhoods, that's where we will get into zoning and the types of housing that are allowed in that sort of thing. We know we have a housing plan that has come forward as to what we need in the community. So we'll talk to the developers and say, okay, this is what we need. We want to see some densification in these neighborhoods so that people, my generation and older, could sell their home and still stay in the community with a townhome or something they could lock and go away for a couple months in the winter or whatever.
By no means am I smart enough to know the answer, but this is just my own from a wickedly handsome and overly paid radio host, and that's also, if you're thinking I'm being sarcastic, it's because I'm laying it on pretty thick. If you take care of your seniors, by default, you'll take care of the generations below them. And I'm just going off the cuff thinking Penticton and some other areas, and where I grew up in Cloverdale's doing this, where you have more places like you kind of vaguely got to, which is 55 and up, fully active. I don't even want to use the word seniors because that's not really a great use of word, but you get what I mean. Fully active, ready to go out and play, want to be with their grandkids, but maybe, you know what? Forget mowing lawns. Let the Aqualine kid do it. Like, let the younger generation do it. But still have the opportunity to come and go as they please to maybe another summer home that they have or a winter home that they have, but maintain a life here without that type of work, thus opening up the doors for the next generation to buy the next level of home, and so on and so forth.
Well, and that's kind of the intention. That's called community, right? That's kind of what we plan, where you You enable the seniors to be able to stay in their homes, to be as active as they can. And Revelstoke's one of the few communities where people can live to a ripe old age. I've had family members here who've been in their 90s who skied into their 80s. So you look at that and say there's all kinds of activities that people can be doing in their senior years, but we need to have the access to medical, and we need to have access to homes that don't require a lot of maintenance.
When the OCP was being discussed, but did it come up that, in the next X while, or actually now, starting now, that the biggest generation that is edging into that is the boomer zoomer generation. Now that, it's time, buying that Penner-sized RV, and I'm going to Yuma, and then I'm coming back. I'm going to go across Canada, and I'm going to go experience life now. And there's a lot out there doing that.
Yeah, there is. And so part of the whole process with Fisham Community Plan is engagement with the community. So we will be going out to the communities to say, hey, what do you want to see? What do you think is necessary? So we're amending the existing community plan to bring it up to today's standards. What does this community want and see? And, that might take 2 years to go through, and then it'll be the part of let's start over again. It's kind of a living document and continuous. So we want to make sure that everybody has input. So whether it's the Zoomer generation, the Boomer generation, or younger, even down to the millennials, what kind of things do they want to see in the community so that we're all inclusive?
Okay. Well, Gary, thank you for that chat. I thought it would be a good idea just to have a lighthearted conversation. Usually it's always doom and gloom, and it gets old to me. So
okay, thank you.
Well, thanks, Gary, and we'll check in with you soon.
Good enough. Thanks, Sean.
See you soon.
Good enough. Thanks, Sean.